Transcripts and recordings of the podcast may not be used for any purpose without the direct written permission of the podcast owner. Welcome to Light It Up, a podcast about resilient women balancing motherhood, their careers, personal lives, and all of the challenges that come along with being a superwoman. Each week, you'll be motivated to take action to lead, inspire, transform, and empower. Now, here's your host, Dr. Aginah M. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Light It Up. I am your host, Dr. Aginah M. I'm so excited about this week's episode because I have a very special guest. And you all know all of my guests are special, but this particular guest is a little bit more special than all of the others. I have my niece, Aisha N, who recently graduated from Governor State University, where she earned her bachelor's degree in psychology. Aisha is currently working as a registered behavior technician. She'll talk to us about that, but I wanted to bring her onto the podcast today because I wanted her to share her journey as she navigated higher education and pursued her bachelor's degree, with the hopes that she can shed some light on the process and her experience, which may be helpful for parents who are preparing to send their children to college, and even for those students who are in the process of graduating from high school and beginning that next chapter of enrolling in a 2 or 4 year institution. So thank you so much for joining me today, Aisha. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm well. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm trying to make it. It's been an interesting Tuesday, I can tell you that much. So before I jump into my questions, I know I don't want you to be nervous. And I know you've probably seen and listened to my podcast enough to know how I do things, which I like to have a conversation. So why don't you start off by sharing with the audience a little bit about yourself?
Okay. So, my name is Aisha N. I am 23 years old. I am currently a registered behavioral technician. I work with children who have autism, and we apply behavioral engineering, which is basically teaching children the skills that they need in order to live and play and talk in their everyday lives. I also just recently graduated from Governor State University. My major was psychology with a preclinical concentration, and with that, I plan to continue my education in an occupational therapy program.
Okay. So let me ask you, you took well, I don't want to say it was a non-traditional method because there are plenty of students who start at a 2 year institution and then transition over to a 4 year institution to earn their degree. I'm just curious to know what was there any particular reason that you decided that you would pursue your associate's degree first and then transition over to a 4 year institution to earn your bachelor's degree?
The main reason was my maturity at the time. I was able to recognize, along with the help of my parents, that going away to school would not be the best decision right away because with freedom, you tend to behave a little differently. And I knew myself well enough to know that I would take advantage of the situation. And so I decided that it would just be best for me to stay at home. So for me, it was my maturity in the situation that I took the time to recognize that I would not make the best decisions, whether it'll be going to class, um, or just how I would handle myself by being alone and having that freedom without anyone to watch over me to kind of guide me. So it was a decision I really wasn't excited about to begin with, but once I was able to move forward and go into it, I was like, this is exactly what I needed to do.
So at what point did you, I guess, kind of accept that you had made the best decision as far as enrolling at a 2-year institution? Two?
It was almost right away. I made the mistake of signing up for classes at 8 a.m., thinking it would be just like high school because you usually start school at 8 a.m. But having to get up, get myself ready, and drive myself to school, and then having the ability to say, oh, I don't feel like it, and it not be an issue, I took advantage of that pretty quickly. I would just stay at home. And at the time, we didn't have the option to log in on Zoom or Blackboard to watch the class. So anything that I missed, that was it. And I hadn't made any friends in the class to where I could say, oh, what did we go over? So I was pretty much just winging that class for the whole semester.
So you learned your lesson that an 8 a.m. class is just not the
Yeah.
best decision. I remember that. That happened to me freshman year, but for a different reason. It was a math class that I didn't realize that everyone enrolled in the class had taken the professor before, but earned an incomplete because it was a really difficult professor and I was a freshman and it was an 8 a.m. class. And when I tried to drop the class, when I realized I was not going to do well in it, it was beyond, I think, the ad drop period. So I was going to, because it was a 5 credit hour class, had I dropped it, I would then be part-time and I had a scholarship and other financial aid based upon my full-time status. And so I was going to have to pay that money back to the university. And that was not happening. So your grandfather told me just don't go to class because he wasn't going to pay for it. And so I stayed in bed because it was an 8 a.m. class. And of course I failed it. So it became a lesson learned to never register for an 8 a.m. class again. Um, so you recognize that you needed to stay home so that you could mature just a little bit, more in order to complete your associate's degree.
Right.
So at what point did you know that you wanted to major in psychology, or kind of walk me through that in terms of how you determined what you were going to major in?
So originally, I planned to major in physical therapy. I mean, not Governor State, Prairie State had a associate's in physical therapy program, but I ended up taking abnormal psychology and human growth and development together with Professor Dr. Halliburton. And one day I was in his office hours and I was telling him I wanted to work with athletes, but I was really falling in love with the psychology courses that I was taking, especially abnormal psychology, which focused on a lot of disabilities. And he brought up occupational therapy. And he was like, this is a way you can still work with athletes, but you're focused on the mental. And so after reading up on it and doing my research, I was like, wow, I can incorporate sports medicine into this. I can still work with a variety of people and do something that I find interesting.
Now, why did you want to work with athletes initially? Was it because you had a little bit of your own experience being an athlete in high school, or was there
Yes,
something
a
else?
free sport athlete, and it just made me realize that this is what I want to do. I want to help people just like me. And injuries, I suffered one myself. It wasn't to the extreme where I had to see a physical therapist, but I knew how I felt sitting on the sidelines. And I was like, I can do anything to make someone else feel better about that or speed that process up. I want to be involved in that.
Okay. And so really the difference between physical therapy and occupational therapy is that the physical therapist does more of the training when you have an injury, right? But the occupational therapy focuses more on the
The
emotional
men.
and psychological aspect of
Yeah.
a disability or injury.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. So you completed your associate's degree and then you still decided that you were going to stay here rather than transfer and go away.
Yeah.
And now that you have completed your degree and you talked about that you're going to pursue an advanced degree, do you have any plans on continuing to stay here? Or are you going to kind of branch out? What are your plans?
The plan is to branch out. Hopefully, before I start the program next year, I will have decided on a place to live, and the place that I decide to live is where I will be continuing my education.
Okay. All right. And so you are actually gainfully employed as well. So you've graduated, got your degree, and you didn't have to start looking for a job because you're already working. Can you talk about what you're currently doing as a, I know I'm going to get this wrong, as a registered behavior technician, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So I currently work with children who are on the spectrum of the autism disorder. My clients are between the ages of 3 and 8, so it is more pediatric based. However, I am able to work with children of all ages. I can do high school level, middle school, or even babies as young as 2.
Hmm.
Um, what I do is I run programs with them to help them navigate through their everyday lives. So whether it's working on saying our manners or whether it's a coax, because some of them are nonverbal. And we want to encourage them to try to at least be able to say something, whether it's mom or stop or help, because signals like that are important, or even certain sign languages, because when you're nonverbal, you might not always be able to be vocal, but people will be able to see what you're doing with your hands. So it's a variety of techniques that allow them to be able to communicate with other people. And so that's what the main focus of my job is.
That actually sounds pretty interesting. When I think about it, and I don't think that I've ever really kind of thought about the field of occupational therapy in terms of working with young children. So I can definitely see where your work would be meaningful because you are making an impact on
Mhm.
on a child's life. Okay. So over the course of the next year or so, um, how are you going to, now, are you planning to enroll in a master's level, doctoral level? How does that work in terms of pursuing the occupational therapy degree?
So there are master level programs, but some schools are offering an entry level doctorate program, which is basically combining the two. So it is a bit more rigorous. So it kind of all depends on where I want to go and how long do I really want to take to be in school.
Is that an area of concern for you in terms of being in school?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Okay. All right. So let me kind of press you just a little bit. You know, in our own family, you have your cousins who are preparing to go away to school. And as I mentioned, we're in graduation season. So we have students who are, either, preparing to enroll at a community college or enroll in a four-year institution. Based upon your experience, what advice would you give students who are preparing to go to college?
The best advice I would give is to please keep an open mind. I know a lot of times we go into college thinking this is what I want to do with life, but taking certain courses or meeting different people can really allow you to branch out and think about other careers that you might not even know one existed, or two that you would be really, really great at. Because I never pictured myself as one to work with children. But now that's something I can see myself doing for the rest of my life. So definitely procrastinate. I know sometimes it gets easy to just say, okay, this is due at 11:59. I can start this at 9 o'clock and be done. But the moment that happens, you'll open an assignment with 8 questions, but question number one has a part A, B, C, and D. And it can catch you completely off guard, and now you're struggling to finish the assignment. So just try to do your assignments early on because it'll really benefit you in the long run.
Okay. Were there, when you were in school, were there any, I guess, professors who you felt like made a profound impact or a difference as far as your experience was concerned?
Yes, there were two. One was Dr. Melanie Spencer. She was my math teacher, and Dr. Andre Halliburton, who I mentioned before, he was my abnormal psychology and my human growth and development teacher.
Okay. Okay. Now, what advice would you give to parents who are getting ready to send their children to school or pay this astronomical tuition? What advice can you give to parents as far as how they can best support their children who are preparing to enroll in college?
What I think would be important, because it's something that sometimes I had and sometimes I felt like I didn't have, was just like a listening ear without feedback. Because sometimes you just want to vent about the stresses of school or what you have going on, but you're not looking for advice about it. You just want to clear your mind. And I think it's very hard sometimes to go to your parents to talk about what's on your mind. And you don't want to feel like you're being judged or like they don't understand. So that's something I would suggest. And to also be involved. School is very hard, and sometimes you can fall to the wayside. And I think being involved and just asking them about assignments, hey, did you do your homework, or remembering that you have a paper due. So what I would do with my parents, sometimes I would tell them I have something due. Come Wednesday, okay, have you started on your paper? And that accountability will click in, like, no, but I'm going to get started on it. And that does help you because you can't always count on your peers to do that for you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take your advice. I probably have to work on the listening without giving my opinion. That's a bit of a challenge for me because I work in higher ed, so it's different. And I try my best to give sound advice, but you know, sometimes when you're too close, you don't listen to the advice. But I'm going to try to make sure that, I listen and not comment or give my opinion or advice until I'm asked for it. Is that what you suggest?
Yes, because sometimes people just need a listening ear, but they don't need an answer. Or they might have it figured out, but it's like, I just really need to clear this off of my chest and let you know what's bothering me. And then, how can you help me? Or, Auntie, can you tell me what I should do about this?
Mhm. Okay. All right. So now what's the end goal like once you earn your next degree? What do you plan
So
on?
I if I get my master's, I do plan to get my doctorate, but if I do the entry level doctorate, I want to open my own rehabilitation center. And it will be focused on addiction studies. It will also be focused on physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapists and RBTs as well.
Okay. So in your current role, do you so the organization that you work for is an independent
Mhm.
entity, but do you all work with school districts in any way or
We do not work directly with school districts, but we've had schools reach out to the BCBA at my job as far as programs and just seeing how they're progressing and seeing if we can make anything focus anything they need to work on in the school, like whether it's working with other children. For example, one of my clients, he likes to be first. When you're in school, you're not always going to be able to go through the door first or be the line leader. So we'll do more programs focused on letting other people go first.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Well, I don't want to hold you too long, but I do have a couple more questions that I want to ask before we wrap up. So, my first question for you is considering, you know, the the path that you took as far as going to community college and then transferring over to a 4-year institution. Is there anything that you would have potentially done differently?
As far as the route of community college and then a 4-year institution, I would not do that differently. It would be more so my focus is outside of school, which was working. So working 2 jobs or trying to hop from one job to another to make more money. I would definitely put less focus on that and more into my education.
Okay. All right. And then considering you're what, 23 years
Yeah.
old? Okay. It's hard for me to keep up with the ages now of you all. So what advice would you give your younger self?
The advice I would give my younger self is to not critique myself so hard and be so judgmental because I don't have the answers to everything. And that stage of your life from about 16 to probably 25 is you figuring it out. And so you're going to make decisions that in the long run might not be the best, or you might be confused, but that's all a part of figuring out. And you can take that and it's making you a completely more evolved and better person.
Okay. But and that advice can also be applicable to your older self as well. Hey, but that, can come full circle as far as, but I think, probably in our family, we do, it might be something about our family where we do have a tendency to kind of be hard on ourselves because we're always, I think, striving to do better. So, but you have to put it all in perspective, is the bottom line. So, um, well, I want to thank you for, taking some time out of your day to join me on Light It Up. Hopefully, you'll be able to come back again and you can give us an update on where you've decided to pursue your advanced degree, whether or not you're going to stay here in Illinois or go away. And then, maybe you can also come back and talk to us more about your profession, because I'm sure you can shed some light, on the subject area, and share information with our listeners that they can find beneficial. So do you think you'll come back and visit?
Yes, I would love to.
All right. Well, I wasn't too bad, right? I didn't make you nervous.
No, it was just a regular conversation, but with cameras.
Well, thank you so much for being my guest. I really do appreciate it. I enjoyed talking to you, and thank you for giving me some sound advice that I can actually use with my own children as they prepare to go away to school. So, for those of you in the listening and viewing audience, thank you very much for tuning in this week. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast. And make sure you share this episode with a friend. Of course, Light It Up is on all platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and even Google Play for those of you who are Android users. And you can also follow the Light It Up podcast on YouTube using It's just Light It Up Podcast. And we're also on social media on Facebook and Instagram. So make sure you check us out there. So until next time, hopefully next week, I'll have a very interesting guest for you all. But until next time, make sure you continue to light it up and shine bright like a diamond. Thanks for joining me this week on Light It Up. Make sure you visit my website at www.lightituppodcast.com or www.aginahmuhammad.com. You can also find me on social media using the handle at Light It Up Podcasts. If you like what you've heard, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or you can simply tell a friend about the show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode. Until next time, light it up and shine bright like a diamond.